This is the story of a bloodline permanently severed not by a single explosive argument, but by 1,000 calculated betrayals. What looked like a series of disjointed public moments over the past few years was actually a devastating metaphor for the collapse of a royal brotherhood. We are no longer witnessing a mere family rift, we are watching the complete and utter erasure of Prince Harry from the life, the future, and the mind of Prince William. In the highest echelons of power, the ultimate punishment is not a public screaming match. The ultimate punishment is a total withdrawal of recognition. According to impeccable sources deeply embedded within the establishment, the Prince of Wales has reached a chilling and irreversible conclusion. He is entirely disgusted by his younger brother's behavior, and the two men are quite simply no longer brothers. In this video, we will unpack the precise anatomy of this final rupture. We will examine what happened behind closed doors that pushed a notoriously measured future king to the point of absolute contempt. We will explore the deeply concerning reports that William is currently being silenced by Buckingham Palace and his own father, King Charles, in a misguided attempt at appeasement. And we will analyze what this severe internal divide means for the future, especially as the Sussexes face a crushing reality of commercial desperation that is forcing them to attempt a desperate return to the very institution they spent years trying to destroy. To truly understand the gravity of this permanent estrangement, we must first remind ourselves of the staggering altitude from which Prince Harry has fallen. There was a time not so long ago when these two brothers represented the untouchable golden era of the modern British monarchy. They were bound by an unimaginable shared trauma, navigating the devastating loss of their mother under the blinding glare of the world stage. Because of that shared crucible, the public granted Harry an unprecedented level of affection and forgiveness. He was the beloved renegade protected by the immense privilege, immense wealth, and the unyielding loyalty of his older brother. The world cared because William cared. They were an unbreakable, united front, possessing a soft power that politicians could only dream of. The contrast between that untouchable royal prestige and the current reality of the Sussexes is nothing short of a staggering psychological and public relations collapse. Harry traded a legacy of global respect for a transactional existence in California, where loyalty is sold to the highest bidder in the form of tell-all memoirs and deeply intrusive streaming documentaries. The moral contradiction is absolute. We were told they were fleeing an oppressive institution for the sake of privacy and mental peace, yet every commercial move they have made since their departure has relied exclusively on the aggressive weaponization of their royal victimhood. It is a stunning display of commercial desperation, trading the sacred mystique of the crown for the fleeting attention of the entertainment industry. This brings us to the chronological unraveling that finally broke the Prince of Wales. Before this current freezing out, there were endless attempts at mediation. There were moments when the public believed a reconciliation was possible. But with every olive branch extended by the palace, a new interview, a new podcast, or a new literary betrayal was launched from Montecito, the realization slowly dawned on the establishment that this was not a cry for help from a misunderstood couple, but a calculated strategy to dismantle the credibility of the working royals for personal profit. The final nail in the coffin was not just the sweeping accusations of cruelty, but the relentless, agonizing drip feed of private family moments served up for public consumption. William watched as his wife, a woman who has never put a foot wrong in her service to the crown, was dragged into the mud of tabloid gossip. He watched as the sacred bonds of their family were commodified, and recently we have seen the very architecture of the Sussex public relations machine begin to implode. Journalists who once served as their most fierce defenders, who championed their narrative of victimization, have publicly turned against them, providing decisive evidence in legal battles that threaten to cost the prince millions of dollars. The illusion of their Hollywood triumph is shattering, exposing a hollow foundation built entirely on grievance. You can see the psychological truth of this desperation in the subtle, devastating signals they broadcast. We observe a brand that is flailing, attempting to pivot into lifestyle markets and product launches that fall entirely flat. We notice the curious tendency to shrink and control the narratives of those around them, even the public revelation of how they refer to their own children by truncated, diminished syllables speaks volumes to those who analyze psychological public relations. It is a classic tactic of a deeply insecure environment where everything and everyone must be made smaller so that the central figures can appear larger. It is a stark contrast to the quiet, dignified stability of the Wales household where Family life is protected, respected, and shared with the public only through carefully curated, profoundly normal moments. Yet the most deeply alarming aspect of this entire saga is the civil war currently raging quietly behind the gates of Buckingham Palace. William, a man of profound action and emotional fortitude, is reportedly being muzzled by the very institution he is destined to lead. King Charles, navigating the heavy burdens of the crown and his own health crises, is operating from a position that William views as immeasurably weak. The king, perhaps blinded by the natural, lingering affection of a father for his youngest son, continues to humor the idea of keeping the door ajar. He recently granted Harry a brief audience, a move that analysts immediately recognized not as a step toward healing, but as a catastrophic miscalculation that only fed the insatiable ego of the Sussex narrative. William understands with chilling clarity what his father refuses to see. Any attempt to bring Harry and Meghan back into the royal fold, even in a peripheral capacity, is a terminal error. The Prince of Wales knows that his brother's brand is professionally bankrupt as an independent entity. He knows that Meghan has realized a solo commercial venture cannot survive without the continuous oxygen of royal proximity. They are desperate to recalibrate their credentials by edging their way back into the institution they publicly abandoned. And William is being told to stand by to fold his arms and to keep his counsel while his father entertains this dangerous delusion. This dynamic is what makes the current situation so incredibly volatile. William is being forced to watch as the seeds of a future crisis are sown. He is tired of the negativity, but more importantly, he is terrified of the institutional rot that will occur if the Sussexes are allowed to shamelessly exploit their titles all over again under the guise of family healing. The palace insists on a gentle approach, arguing that reconciliation is necessary for public relations. But for William, this is not about public relations. This is about the survival of the monarchy itself. We are left standing on the edge of a precipice. On one side is a king trying to manage an impossible family dynamic through passive appeasement. On the other side is a Prince of Wales boiling with a quiet, disciplined rage, forced to bite his lip and wait. But William is not just a son, he is the king in waiting. He is the man who will eventually inherit this unresolved disaster. And as the Sussexes maneuver in the shadows, desperate to reclaim their lost relevance, the tension within the palace is reaching a critical mass. The silence imposed on William is not a sign of his weakness, but a gathering storm. What happens when the man who holds his brother in total contempt finally holds the absolute power of the crown? To understand the true danger of William's forced silence, we have to look past the current reign and analyze what happens when the Prince of Wales is finally unbound. The transition of power is not merely a ceremonial handover, it is a fundamental shift in how the institution protects itself. While King Charles views his reign through the lens of a father trying to keep the peace in his twilight years, William views his future reign through the lens of institutional survival. For William, the monarchy is not a family business that can afford to carry dead weight. It is a 1,000-year-old diplomatic apparatus, and he is watching his father treat a catastrophic security leak as a mere family dispute. The frustration boiling inside the Prince of Wales is not born out of petty sibling rivalry. It is the cold, calculated realization that he is the one who will eventually have to clean up this mess. When we analyze the psychology of this estrangement, we must examine the stark contrast in how these two men process trauma and pressure. Harry has spent the last several years aggressively adopting the language of California wellness, turning the private act of therapy into a public weapon. He has commodified his emotional wounds, presenting himself as a cycle breaker, while simultaneously demanding apologies. And financial security from the very people he claims traumatized him. It is a spectacular moral contradiction. William, on the other hand, operates from a place of profound emotional fortitude. He relies on an impenetrable inner circle anchored by the quiet strength of his wife, Catherine, and the steadfast loyalty of the Middleton family. In the face of his own father and wife battling serious health crises, William has not taken to television to air his grievances. He has simply put his head down and done the work. This stoic resilience is exactly why the public implicitly trusts him, and why Harry's endless stream of complaints now rings so remarkably hollow to the global audience. This brings us to the devastating reality of the Sussexes' current commercial positioning, and the subtle visual signals that confirm their precipitous decline. If you want to know the true status of a royal in exile, you do not look at what they say, you look at who stands next to them. In the beginning of their Hollywood venture, they were flanked by A-list power brokers, billionaires, and industry titans. Today we see a much darker psychological truth playing out on the margins of their public appearances. We see an invisible barrier. The Hollywood elite, an ecosystem that respects only two things, power and discretion, has quietly but deliberately stepped back. The Sussexes are no longer the guests of honor at the most exclusive tables. They have become a PR liability. You can see this commercial desperation manifesting in Meghan's recent attempts to pivot into the lifestyle space. What looked like a simple product launch, sending jars of artisanal jam to social media, influencers was actually a devastating metaphor for how far their currency has depreciated. A woman who was once positioned to be a transformative global diplomat, shaping Commonwealth initiatives and standing alongside world leaders, is now competing in the saturated market of internet lifestyle bloggers. It is a staggering reduction in status. They traded the historic balconies of Buckingham Palace for the fleeting validation of Instagram stories, and yet this pivot is not born of a genuine passion for domesticity. It is born of absolute necessity. Their high-stakes, grievance-based business model has run out of runway. The public is entirely exhausted by their victimhood, leaving them frantically searching for a new narrative that does not require attacking the crown. But William knows that this commercial failure is exactly what makes them dangerous. As their independent ventures dry up, their desperation to reattach themselves to the royal brand will only intensify. This is why William views his father's soft approach as a fatal error. William is practicing strategic starvation. He understands that the only way to neutralize a parasitic public relations machine is to entirely cut off its oxygen supply. By refusing to engage, by refusing to acknowledge them, and by attempting to block any path back to the inner circle, William is systematically dismantling their relevance. He is not just closing the door, he is bricking it over. This is precisely why this story resonates so deeply with millions of viewers around the world. At its core, this is no longer a story about dukes and duchesses. It is a deeply relatable human narrative about the agonizing necessity of drawing a permanent boundary with toxic family members. Everyone who has ever had to cut ties with a relative who continually exploits, manipulates, and betrays them sees their own struggle reflected in William's stoic silence. The public recognizes that William is not punishing his brother out of malice. He is executing a necessary amputation to save the rest of the body. He is protecting his wife, protecting his children, and protecting his legacy from a threat that has proven it respects absolutely no boundaries. Looking forward, the tension within the palace will only escalate. The clock is ticking, and the balance of power shifts slightly more toward the Prince of Wales with every passing day. Until that final transition occurs, William will continue to bite his lip. He will continue to present a flawless, duty-bound front to the world, executing his diplomatic roles with the exact precision his grandmother taught him. But behind the scenes, the blueprints for his future reign are already being drawn. And in those blueprints, there is no ambiguity. There is no compromise. There is no half-in, half-out arrangement. The story of William and Harry is a modern tragedy, a profound lesson in the illusion of power and the devastating cost of ultimate betrayal. What happens next will not be a loud explosion, but a quiet, permanent erasure. When the time finally comes, William will not need to raise his voice to put an end to the Sussex circus. He will simply turn his back, and the rest of the world will follow. Thank you for watching. If you appreciate this level of deep analytical storytelling, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let me know your thoughts on William's silent strategy in the comments below. We will see you in the next deep dive.